I couldn't cry, I couldn't scream. All I could hear was the screams of my neighbors, and it just felt really surreal.
The physical destruction the tornado left behind is very easy to see, but survivors are also dealing with traumatic emotional stress. How do you cope with survivor's guilt when your neighbor lost everything but your home is still standing? Clinical psychologist Dr. Daniela Schreier is here. We know we've been talking about this for a few days now, and everyone looks around and it's awful to see everything around them and then they're fine. How do you even begin to deal with that?
Well, it's very difficult because you know what? All of them are in this together. They really faced mortality, and we are normally living as if, you know, life would last forever. Right. And I think in that situation, they all had the same primary trauma, meaning fearing for their lives, running down the basement, and not knowing what to expect when you come up, even not knowing if any of the loved ones not with you would survive the tornado.
And then you say there's this secondary trauma. What happens?
Well, what I'm calling that is if you are getting out there and first you're seeing, hey, my house is the only one up the entire street, it's still standing, you feel relief. Gosh, even happiness, everyone is fine. But then you think about your neighbor Joe, you grilled with him before in his yard, your grill is still standing, but his is gone. Actually, his kitchen sink is in your yard now. So the fact is that natural disasters are actually easier overcome than man-made disasters, individual attacks. But the person who hasn't lost everything now feels excluded and he feels bad and guilty. But I always tell them guilt doesn't change anything, it doesn't help anyone. So the best thing is to be appreciative and to show gratitude by helping your neighbor. If you have something to offer to them in terms of food, housing, etc., reach out and build the community.
Now, how does this compare? You know, this is obviously not a man-made tragedy. We hear of all the shootings and things. How does this compare to the stress related to situations like that? This is obviously catastrophic. So are school shootings, for example. Is one easier to deal with than the other?
As I said before, a natural disaster like a tornado, right? We are all hit by it in some way, at least the people in your area, even if you're targeted only marginally. And it's easier to say because I was not picked out as an individual. We can't actually help the weather. We can't control it. But if you're becoming a victim, right, of an individual attack, someone assaults you sexually or with a gun and weapon, etc., you're always wondering, why me? There's that fear that always remains. Will it happen again tomorrow? With a tornado, at least we know most likely it will not happen again in a week. It could in a couple of years or months, right? But with your assault, you actually lose the feeling of a just world. You thought you would do the right thing, and actually, why is it happening to you? There's no justification. When you see your neighbors suffering with you, it's easier because you can say we are a community, we're rebuilding together.
Real quickly, let me ask you this, because I know you've probably heard it. People say, I just can't watch it anymore. I can't look at the pictures on TV. I don't want to hear the news about the tornadoes. What are we experiencing when we say that?
Well, the fact is that you're re-traumatizing yourself. It was the same as 9/11.
But is it even if you were not experiencing it directly?
Yep. You can be traumatized if someone calls you and tells you about, my father was in an accident, he lost his legs, this is how it happened. And if you're exposing yourself over and over again to these images, it's really unhealthy for you and your children.
I see. All right. Dr. Daniela Schreier, thank you so much.
My pleasure, always.
Now I understand why people say that, because you always wonder, well, don't you want to hear about the latest information? And some say it's just too much to
More
say.
is not always better.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Corey, Natalie, over to you.
I know what you're talking. I've heard that.